the crisis of thousands of our neighbors experiencing homelessness on our streets. A crisis that predated COVID, a crisis made far worse by COVID, and a crisis that will remain with us after COVID unless we take bold action.
That's Councilmember Andrew J. Lewis there talking about some new shelter investments to deal with our homelessness crisis, specifically during the COVID pandemic here in Seattle. What is happening there? How's the city spending the federal COVID relief dollars that are coming in? We are tackling those questions and a whole lot more this week on Seattle News, Views, and Brews, your coffee break political podcast. I'm Brian Callanan, a host on Seattle Channel, and the views expressed here are my own. And if you ever wondered what negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a really is, I know the guy who knows the answer. It's my co-host, Kevin Schofield of Seattle City Council Insight. Hello to you, sir.
Hey, what can I say?
He's all about the math.
I'm well rooted in math, so
it's a good thing to know. We're going to have some fun with math later on in the show. Can't wait for that. A big thanks to City Grind Espresso, our background noise sponsor for the audio podcast. Please do support them, other small businesses. Thanks also to our patrons on Patreon. Catherine bumped up her pledge to $10 this week. Thanks a million, Catherine. We are sending her a Seattle News, Views, and Brews coffee mug here. Make sure you get your own. If you want one, support us on Patreon, why don't you? We're asking people to consider the $10 level and above. Nice work there. You could be a hand model, Kevin. I know it. If you want one, you can do that on Patreon there. We really do appreciate that. And our mugshot of the week, we've had some doozies recently. This one, a little bit more of a stately move. Charlotte sending in a photo of her tea counter at home. Very beautiful work there. Thank you for sending that in. Thank you also for your support. So please do be a patron on Patreon. Get a mug. We'll get that mug shot on the show. And finally, a thanks to Converge Media, which runs the video version of our podcast on their YouTube channel Wednesday nights at 7. Happy anniversary to the Morning Update Show. Awesome work there. Way to go, Trey and Omari. Keep up the good work. Let's get things started with right here, right now. Well, the fourth week of March is upon us. A lot on the council's plate this week. Let's start with a new ordinance to appropriate $12 million for additional non-congregate housing, shelter for homeless people, money that would be reimbursed by FEMA. You heard Councilmember Lewis talking about this at the top of the show. Councilmember Lewis and Councilmember Mosqueda sponsored this. And Kevin, there was a lot of debate at City Hall over whether these services could even be reimbursed by FEMA. What was going on here?
Yeah, it started as this you could say it's a misunderstanding, probably more of a miscommunication simply between City Council and the Mayor's office about this question of what homeless services and homeless shelter they provide would potentially be reimbursable by FEMA. And word had sort of spread through different circles that it was going to be 100% reimbursable. Like, so, hey, let's go crazy and do all sorts of things, and because we can do whatever we want, and FEMA's going to pay for it all.
Right.
And the mayor's office tried to inject a little reality, and they were probably a little too conservative. So went back and forth. At the end of the day, where they seem to have ended up now, when they actually sat down with FEMA officials,
right, and talked to them. Yes, go figure.
Yeah, FEMA will reimburse some things. They will specifically reimburse homeless shelter, non-congregate homeless shelter, for people who are homeless who are at higher risk of getting COVID. So not
older
just anybody,
people with other comorbidities, as they put it. Yeah.
Now they don't advance the money, so the city actually has to pay for it first, and then ask for reimbursement. The city has to get pre-approval from FEMA first.
Yes.
By the way, they probably are not going to pay for all the services that we like to wrap around this to make sure that people kind of move on to get them ready to move on to permanent housing and get out of homelessness. So they're not going to get 100%. But there is a possibility here. So what Councilmember Lewis is pushing forward here is a $12 million ordinance, an allocation, so they can ramp up some more homeless shelters specifically for these people who are at high risk of COVID and are out on the streets today. That we can go through and ask for pre-approval with FEMA, and hopefully they'll get most of the money back. Yeah.
Right. And so $12 million, the council appropriates it, and then the mayor has to spend it. It really seemed to me that there might have been a push more towards this idea of hotel rooms. Did you get that feel from reading through the legislation there, Kevin? Because I know that's been a big issue. The Just Care program for King County has been doing that work. What do you think about the hotel rooms piece of this?
Yeah, so that is one form of non-congregate shelter that the city's using.
Tiny home villages could be another part.
Yeah, and those are really the two main ones right now. Tiny home villages, which take a little while to get going, and hotels, which they can do essentially right
now. Yeah.
And so there's a big push to do hotels. It is expensive. right?
Yeah,
So
right.
it's so the $12 million doesn't go as far or as long as as they'd like to do that, but with FEMA reimbursing it seems like a pretty good thing to do.
Right, right. And it's not one of these deals where it's a continuing expense. This is a one-time shot here, and we'll see where these programs go in the future. But let me keep going down this path with you, Kevin. When it comes to spending federal relief dollars from the American Rescue Plan, which was approved back on March 11th, the city is also passing a resolution this week to maximize future federal funding. Easy for me to say. So, Kevin, we're talking about $239 million coming into the city of Seattle, half of that coming in this year in direct aid, as I understand it. What's the council going to spend this on?
Yeah, so they're passing a resolution this week, which is kind of a not legally binding thing.
Right.
That says, here are our priorities for how to spend all this money that's coming in. And, there's part of it for COVID response. There's part of it for housing and for homelessness. A number, there's actually, when you look through it, there isn't a ton new in that. It's largely the progressive agenda that the city council has anyway. Right?
Prioritizing BIPOC people, Latinx people. I know that, trying to help them out.
All the stuff we've heard them say before. And the nice part is, one of the things that got into this American Recovery Act bill was that some portion of the money the city can use to replace revenues that they lost because of the economic downturn, and that gives them a lot of flexibility on how exactly they want to spend this money. Right. So again, this is a resolution. It's not binding. It's probably more than anything else a signal to the mayor's office as to what they should propose. When they send over spending bills for this money. But the city council, the big arguments are still to come. Right. As the spending bills one by one come through for portions of this money, the city council is going to argue and, haggle back and forth about how much to spend on this and how much to spend on that. Each city council members, pet projects will get in there for some amount of it.
Yeah, I know that, and we'll see what the mayor has to say too. I know one of the sublines here was the possibility of providing premium pay for employees of the city or other eligible employers who perform essential work. So I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on that one in terms of what the mayor's going to come up with on that score. I did want to touch on one last issue before we get to our next segment here. Seattle City Light is working on a rate hike. Nothing this year, but about 3.9% for next year. Nothing new this year, I should say. It seems really simple on the exterior, but there's a ton of complexity to this, Kevin. And you went into this on Seattle City Council Insight. People are conserving more energy. There are more alternate sources coming online, like wind and solar and things like that. And we had a big drop in usage last year, specifically from the industrial sector. What's going on behind this?
From the commercial sector.
Commercial centers, where
everybody's working from home. All those tall office towers downtown were mostly shut down. Everybody's working from home. So there was a rise in electric bills for homes, but there was a big drop for commercial, and commercial is 59% of the revenues. Right. For Seattle City Light. So they lost a lot of revenue. So what they did was that they took a good hard look at it last year, and they said, we can't raise rates in the middle of a pandemic and economic downturn. That's just the wrong thing to do. So they found a way to cut about $30 million of one-time expenses, and they kept rates flat. And so at the beginning of this year, they were supposed to do about a 4% increase too. Right. And they didn't do that either, but there's a limit to how long they can do this. And they're starting to get themselves a pretty deep hole to do this. I see. But what's happening is that there's a surcharge that's been on our bills that's about to come off. Okay. I could spend 5 minutes explaining what the surcharge is all about, but it's literally like next month going to come off our bill. Okay. And it's about 3%. So what Seattle City Light has said is, okay, we're going to do a 3% rate increase next month. Yes. Okay. That will offset this 3% surcharge. So nobody will see any changes in their bills. Okay. Nobody's bill has to go up, but we'll have a little bit more rate revenue that we can use to cover things. Okay. And then next year, the beginning of next year, we're scheduled to do a 3.9% increase, and we're going to do that. But as it turns out, they buy a lot of their power from Bonneville Power Administration, otherwise known as BPA. BPA, right? And BPA, everybody expects that they're going to lower their rates by about 1.5% starting next year. Yeah. So that is going to offset 1.5% of the 3.9% increase. So it looks like the net increase next year is going to be about 2.4%. Wow. I just looking
Yeah, there's a ton of math, and we've got a lot more fun math ahead here,
more
folks.
math
But
coming,
yeah, looking at this, Kevin, I was interested to see just this whole idea of forecasting who's going to use power when. This is such a volatile game here. Certainly was the case during COVID, but trying to look ahead as the council is doing, not just next year, but 10 years, 20 years down the line. I think about the fact that the council is now calling for no natural gas to be going into multifamily buildings that are built here in the future as more things get electrified, as it were, within the city here. I wonder how that's going to affect demand.
Yeah, and that, they have a plan going out to 2040, right?
Yeah.
And the farther you go out, the less accurate it is.
Of course, yeah.
But they basically have two lines in that plan. One is what happens if we don't do a major electrification of buildings and transportation, and what happens if we do? And there's about a 10% difference in the revenues between those two, right?
Wow, that's pretty stark. Big. Yeah, it's a big number, and I know we're going to have some more information from the council on this. A final vote on these rate hikes is actually set for March 29th. Let's keep rolling with Now Hear This. So a funny thing happened on the way to the city council approving free legal counsel for tenants involved in eviction cases. Mayor Durkan decided to extend the eviction moratorium to June 30th. This was just before the council might have moved this issue up for a vote to the full council here. So the council has now decided to delay its decision on this until later in the month. And Councilmember Sawant, one of the sponsors of this bill, is not happy about it. Let's listen.
If today progressive Democrats on the city council are saying they don't intend to put in bad loopholes, they just want some clarification, fine, let's hold them to it. And it is important that movement activists understand from what's happening today that we need to fight even harder. We cannot trust the rhetoric of politicians. We have to fight for what we need.
Yeah, remember that time that Councilmember Sawant was upset about something? Well, guess what? It happened again there. Well, Councilmember Peterson was the one who brought up the idea of delaying the vote on this. Before we get into what it means to extend the eviction moratorium, I want to consider this delay on the free legal counsel piece. What amendments do you see coming back on this bill, Kevin?
Yeah, so the biggest question, and the council members are being a little cagey about this because they're trying to maintain their attorney-client privilege.
Yeah.
They're talking with
the city attorneys.
And city attorneys have apparently raised some legal concerns about this. And the biggest one seemed to be around what's called gifts of public funds. The Washington State Constitution prohibits state and local government from giving public resources and public funds away, other than in support of the poor, literally
poor and infirm. Yeah,
poor and
right.
Infirm.
Yeah.
So, in this case, the legal question is, there's no question they can provide legal services to poor tenants.
Sure, right.
Who are being evicted, but they can do it can they do it for ones who aren't poor?
Right. And because the idea is that this would apply to anybody. You wouldn't have to have some sort of income verification or anything like that.
Councilmember Sawant has written this to be a right to legal counsel for everyone facing eviction.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's this question of, is that an unconstitutional gift of public funds? So they're having that debate in the back.
Yeah.
And so an amendment we may see in this is one that specifically sort of limits it to put some kind of income limit in it.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the term that gets bandied around for that is called means testing.
Yes, of course.
And the problem with means testing is it creates barriers for the people that we want to access it because they have to provide the right documentation.
Yeah, yeah.
And in some cases, the means testing is taken care of by self-certification.
Yeah, I will say also
signing something saying I make less than this amount, but there are other cases where poor people basically have to document that they're poor. Right.
And the other side of this too, it actually costs money to measure money. I talked with Councilmember Lewis about this specifically because he's one of the co-sponsors on here. And his question about this was, okay, we're going to have to hire some sort of full-time employee to look at this. There's some money right there. We're going to have to get some new software to figure out this income vetting and how we do that. He's talking about costs that could be upwards of $500,000 just to do that. So it does cost some money here too. And I think all these factors kind of come into play here. He's concerned about that expenditure and looking at other cities who do this around the country and saying, well, they can do it. Why can't we? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So there are cities that do this on a small level, and San Francisco does this, and San Francisco's experience just coming back to this income check thing their experience is 85% of the people who use it
Mm-hmm.
are the people that we would want to be using it, the ones who are really poor.
Yeah.
Right. So, to answer the question of, in these sorts of systems, are well-off people have the financial resources to hire their own attorney, taking advantage of this? And mostly the answer is no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that even if the answer is no, that doesn't make it less unconstitutional.
Right. That's going to be a test.
So,
yeah.
If one person who shouldn't uses it,
That's
it's
right.
unconstitutional.
That's right. And I also should point out, Councilmember Lewis, he talked about this on the Council Edition show that's on Seattle Channel right now. So I want to make sure you check it out there, folks. A good show this month. They always are. But Councilmember Lewis also mentioned that a vast majority of these cases, these eviction cases in New York, the eviction was overturned in court. So he was concerned about that, saying, maybe we need to do this. Maybe more of these cases are a situation where these tenants actually need some counsel. So we're going to stay tuned for what's next on this bill. But I wanted to talk about the eviction moratorium being extended through June at the city level and now the state level too. Were you surprised at all to see that, Kevin? I think we saw that coming probably.
I was not surprised to see it. There is sort of this looming question because there have been legal challenges to the eviction moratoriums. And part of the reason they've survived is because they've been temporary measures.
Right.
They've been in place for a long time now.
Yeah.
Right? And well over a year now.
Right.
With this
Councilmember Sawant saying put it through the end of 2021. Yeah. Right.
And City Council has passed something that says it extend, at least some of the protections extend for 6 months after the pandemic
declared end to the emergency.
Is lifted. So it's not going to go away. Now it's effectively to the end of the year anyway. Right.
Yeah.
So at some point, does the financial burden upon landlords get to, even large landlords, get to be so huge from this that the courts have to say, okay, the landlords have a point now.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know if we reach that. And I don't know. The courts have been incredibly deferential to governments.
In this situation,
in using their powers to manage the COVID emergency.
Right.
So,
is it a situation where you think maybe some of these new federal dollars that are coming into the city, maybe that's an answer there? Some more direct rent relief that could help tenants, could help landlords potentially here too?
Yeah. So, they certainly rent assistance is a high priority for the city council in using these federal dollars. And they've already been putting a lot into that. And the state has been putting some into that as well. But then there's also mortgage assistance for smaller landlords. Right. To help them as well.
Yeah, so there's still a lot ahead on that. We're covering that story on Seattle Channel 2, so keep an eye out for that one. But I did want to catch up on a couple more court cases, if we could, Kevin. No news on the Councilmember Sawant recall decision from the state Supreme Court yet. Just dragging their feet on that one. But it took only about 15 minutes for a U.S. District Court judge to make the call to uphold Seattle's new hazard pay ordinance, that $4 per hour pay boost for grocery workers. Kevin, you reported on this on SEC Insight. What happened there? What's next? It sounds like maybe a trip to the Court of Appeals at this point.
Oh, already. They have already filed their appeal.
I see.
They filed it. They filed it the next day. They filed it on Friday.
Oh wow.
So they wasted no time in appealing it. The judge, clearly he did oral arguments on Thursday last week, and it was clear that he had already written his
made
decision.
Up his mind. Yeah.
At the end of it, he's like, "You'll hear from me shortly." 15 minutes later, boom, it was out the door. And he basically agreed with the city on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And his ruling was very similar to one in a Long Beach, California case that was ruled on at the beginning of this month. And so now, and that has also been appealed.
I see.
So they're both up at the Ninth Circuit now. It wouldn't surprise me if the Ninth Circuit just combines them together because they're essentially all the same issues.
Yeah, combo platter
we'll
there. Yeah,
there's enough room, in there. At some level, the district court judges are constrained by previous rulings by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and by the U.S. Supreme Court. And so the Ninth Circuit may, reinterpret some of its earlier rulings and say this is different in some ways about this. We'll just So it's going to be hard to predict what the Ninth Circuit does with this.
Well, funny you should mention the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals because that court just upheld the ordinance from Seattle requiring hotel employers to pay for their employees' health care here. So that one went relatively quickly too, a 3-week turnaround. I know you wrote about this in SEC Insight too.
And so, I really hate to say this about the Ninth Circuit, but they phoned this one in.
Oh, no. Boy.
Their ruling was 4 pages.
Yeah.
4 pages.
Moving on.
And
well, they based it on a past case too. It sounded like from San Francisco, saying we already ruled
on a past case from San Francisco, where there were clear differences with this case.
Yeah.
And they basically just ignored all that. And so I expect that the hotels are going to, and this case was about hotels being required to pay a certain minimum amount on health care for their hotel employees.
That's right. Yeah.
I expect the hotels are going to ask the full Ninth Circuit to weigh in on this.
Right.
And they could weigh very differently. I mean, it really does. This one does look a little weird. Like I said, it kind of looks like this 3-judge panel phoned it in.
Okay.
On this one. And again, I don't like saying that. And I'm probably going to get nasty emails from people about that.
That's right. Well, watch out.
But they did not. They turned around super quickly, and it was 4 pages. But I look at it, and I don't think it was nearly as obvious as they did. And they skirted over. They hand waved a whole bunch of issues.
I see.
In this,
okay.
4-page ruling. So
can't sneak one past Kevin. We'll see what they do on that one.
I'm not even a lawyer, let alone a judge. So they can sneak whatever the heck they want.
They could try. They could try. Let's move on to our final segment here. What's next? Plenty of fun election news over the past week. Bruce Harrell, former council member, interim mayor, he's running for mayor. Jessen Farrell, former state rep, she's been a candidate before. She's going to run now too. Some high profile names, I should say, now on that 15-person list of candidates for mayor. Wow, there's a lot. But here on Seattle News, Views, and Brews, we bring you the story behind the story. And Kevin, you did some research, my friend, when we're talking about the redistricting process for the council, how it's going to shake out. That process for joining the districting commission is underway. Kevin, your article is going to be required reading on this. So we're talking about a challenge here. Some of the city's districts are growing, some are shrinking, but the law says all 7 districts need to be close in size, the difference no bigger than 1% of the total city population. So we're talking about a shakeup, it sounds like, Kevin, for just about every district in the city.
Yes, it's plus or minus about 3,700, right? And the largest, so they're all going to have to be like the average size, about 106,000 right now.
Yeah.
If we had to do, across the 7 districts, the current population we think they have right now, about 106, 107,000. So add or subtract about 3,700, and that's the range they all have to be within. District 7 right now is 123,000 people.
Wow.
Right?
That's downtown. We're talking.
District 5 is about 98,000 people, right? So
that's the north side. Okay.
So District 4 is the only one that's actually within the acceptable range.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
There 3 and 7 need to shrink a bunch.
Yes.
And the other 4 need to grow.
Okay.
But the rules are complicated.
Yeah.
Right? A district has to be contiguous. You can't have just add like little blocks somewhere else in the city.
Right.
And the boundaries pretty much have to be either the existing boundaries or like existing waterways or boundaries of neighborhoods or things. So
I-5, things of that nature. Yeah.
I-5. So you just can't have arbitrary boundaries. So
right.
If you start moving the boundaries, it gets to be a little complicated. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a tile shuffling game going on as he moves. Like District 1 has to grow, but the only other district it touches is District 2.
Right down there on the south side. Yeah.
Which also has to grow.
Right.
So to fix the problem for District 1, you're going to make District 2's problem even worse.
That's so and it's interesting too. One more little tidbit that I thought was fascinating here. The redistricting commission cannot look at where different council members live. It could be a situation where we got to redraw this boundary, but oops, that council member doesn't live there anymore. I thought that was a fascinating twist on this.
Yeah. And, it's not just where those, and, that's the kind of thing that happens all the time, right?
Yeah.
Redistricting commissions, traditionally try to do redistricting because they're often very partisan redistricting commissions. They'll do them to preserve districts for incumbents.
Right.
And so this rule really prevents that. They cannot do that.
That's right. The first, I guess, real test of this system, the first time we've redistricted, of course, we put this in place in 2013. So fascinating to see this. And this commission taking applications to be part of it through the end of March. So make sure you get in your application there. So
March 29th.
March 29th. Let's do it. We always try to finish up our show with a taste of some of the good things to have with your coffee break. And Kevin, you got anything cooking there? What do you got?
I didn't bake anything this week.
Okay.
But I did.
So you're digesting something, it looks like.
I did go to Mighty O Donuts.
Oh, that's the fritter. That's the fritter I dream about.
The fritter. It has been just taunting me as we've been recording this. Like my whole office here just smells like fritter. It smells so good. It's been driving me crazy for the last 20 minutes we've been recording this.
Coffee and donuts. It just makes sense. Well, I have brought in with me the last piece of Irish soda bread in my house, and this is just a chunk of it. I've been hoarding it since St. Patrick's Day. This was from my grandmother Callanan's recipe. May she rest in peace. But it was a great recipe with the caraway seeds and the baking soda, of course. That's a big part of the bread. And then the one instruction that I never really completely understood was bake it for God knows how long. Like she didn't even put a time on the thing. And I've looked at some of these recipes, like some are a half hour, some are an hour. What's with this with the Irish soda bread? This thing is a fickle recipe. I don't know quite how to put it. It's great stuff, but why?
It's Irish.
It's
Irish.
Go figure.
And I can say that because my name's Kevin, and I'm like, there's so much Irish.
Callanan, you got me covered too, man. It's good stuff, though. I know that. All right. Well, you enjoy your donut. I will enjoy some Irish soda bread, and thank you once again, sir, for being a part of this show.
Thank you.
All righty. Thanks also to all of our patrons, too. Please do support us on Patreon at $10 a month if you can to get your very own Seattle News, Views, and Brews coffee mug there. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Seattle News, Views, and Brews, where you can always find out what's brewing in local politics. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen. And again, please do support us on Patreon. If you like what you're hearing, we need your help to keep this podcast rolling. Thanks also for watching on Converge Media, too. Happy anniversary to the Morning Update Show. We will see you all next time.
Seattle News, Views, and Brews is an independent production of Callanan Media Services. Copyright 2021.